To say the Eastern Conference Finals here at Olympic Stadium was dramatic would be an understatement. I'm pretty sure we saw everything here tonight, from unexpected delays before the match to a lot of goals being scored between both of these two teams, with the Montreal Impact coming out with the upper hand of those goals. 3-2 for the Impact was the final score here tonight. Shari Gibson and Terry Dunfield here to break it all down for you. So Terry, let's start at the beginning of the night. It was less than an hour until kickoff when we found out that the 18-yard boxes were in fact too narrow and had to be repainted, which delayed the start of the match by over 30 minutes. Just how much impact does this have on both of the teams as they head into the biggest game of their season?
Yeah, I think in that changing room, each player sort of has their own little rituals, and you try to time your activation program to exactly when the game's starting. That throws you off a little bit, and it obviously affected Toronto FC a little bit more than Montreal. Couple that with the AstroTurf pitch, I think TFC, that was already in the back of the mind. So possibly, I know footballers love to use an excuse. I think tonight they had a legitimate one.
Well, you touch on the turf here, and it was a big storyline heading into the Big O here this week, and it really did seem to be quite fast. You've played on this turf yourself, Terry, so what do you think was the overall feel of the game? It seemed very fast-paced due to the turf at the beginning.
Yeah, the first 20 minutes, Montreal came flying out of the gate. They were all over TFC. Patrice Bernier in the middle of the park, he was a bit of a pain in TFC's backside. He was playing higher up the pitch, and he caused problems. The first goal comes from that. It's a clever term from when he plays Oduro in, and before TFC knew it, they were down 3-0, but in the second half they showed massive character to come back.
Well, it was two substitutes from Greg Vanney and Toronto FC in the second half that seemed to be the turning point for the Reds here in Montreal, that coming with Tosaint Ricketts and Will Johnson. So what do you think was the significance of these two subs coming into the game?
I think Will Johnson in midfield gave Michael Bradley a little bit more support. He also found a little pocket to play in, just in between the midfield and defenders. He got a lot of the ball. He also gives the team a ton of energy in the middle of the park, and I think he really relished playing in front of 61,000 people, being a Canadian international. The game really suited him down to the ground, and he made a huge difference. I think Tosaint Ricketts, his pace in behind, all of a sudden Montreal started to drop a little bit deeper. He became a bit of a focus point, which then allowed Altidore space to do his thing, Javinko to get on the ball. Also, Tosaint Ricketts gives you a ton of energy. I think he gave Altidore a lift.
Well, you talked about Michael Bradley. He certainly was a turning point for the Reds here tonight, scoring the second away goal. That will be very important as they head back to Toronto. Here's what the captain of Toronto FC had to say after today's match.
Nothing went how we would have liked tonight. Nothing went how we planned. Nothing went in the way we prepared. But that's football sometimes, and you don't get anywhere if you can't play on those days, and you don't get anywhere if you don't have a group that, even on days when things don't come easy, can keep after it and find ways to fight and still come away with something.
There wasn't a TFC team before this that probably would have been able to dig themselves out of a hole like that, and that's a tribute to the character of this group, the belief, because there weren't a lot of things going overly well for us during a lot of the game, and we managed to find a few margins where we could tilt it in our favor and get a couple goals. And at the end of the day, it's all about goals right now. It's an aggregate, and 2 away goals are big.
Another big presence up front for the Reds was Josie Altidore, who really came alive in the second half, of being involved in both of the goals for the Reds. So how important, Terry, was this performance from Josie tonight?
Yeah, I think once Tosaint Ricketts came on, it gave him a real lift. He really took the game by the scruff of the neck, and that's what TFC needed. He led from the front, he set the press off, and that defensive work, actually, he was able to capitalize on that, and that played him into the game. All of a sudden, he scores a wonderful header. There wasn't a ton of pace on that ball from Javinko. That was a difficult header he made look really simple. And then on the second goal, he absolutely walks right over top of Cabrera. He wanted it more than him. The ball sprays out to Michael Bradley, and then he slots it away.
Well, I like what you said there, that he wanted it more than him, because that passion from the Reds, you could really see it as they started to mount the comeback here at the Big O. So how important is it for them to have these 2 road goals as they head back to Toronto for the second leg?
At 3-0 down, you're thinking, oh no, but look, they scored 2. All of a sudden, you're right back in it. For me, I don't think it's a result they wanted coming here, but you take that all day long. All you need is a 1-0 win at home. I say all you need, but you know what? TFC have so much firepower. They've got goals in them, we know that, but there's a lot to play for. So Montreal were very good on the counters we saw today. They were extremely clinical, so TFC cannot leave themselves too open at BMO, but what an encounter we have ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, well, you said it, Terry. We have to give a shout out, of course, to the amazing Toronto FC fans that made the trip here to Montreal. Over 3,000 in the stands today. You could definitely hear them here at the Big O, and you know we are going to hear them at BMO Field next Wednesday. So keep it locked here on torontofc.ca for all of your Toronto FC coverage leading up to the second leg of the Eastern Conference Finals.